Good evening. This is Professor Rush again, with the first in a series debunking the ancient alien hypothesis. This time I want to discuss Zecharia Sitchen's Earth Chronicles series and his what I call corrupted cosmologies. I want to state first that I wouldn't be spending very much time on this at all. Certainly there's been barely a whisper from the scientific community on ancient aliens. However, the History Channel has been incessantly playing the Ancient Alien Hunter series as some sort of fact. That is, ancient aliens came here millennia ago, modified us as slaves to work in mines, dropped atom bombs, built pyramids in Egypt and in Peru, and so on and so forth. I also will take issue in future presentations to their presentations of figures in the Bible as historical fact. That is, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, that there's a God in heaven looking down on all of us, that Revelation has been correctly interpreted by the biblical scholars, and many other issues which come under the heading of poetry, fiction, or myth, not history. There is history surrounding the construction of the Old and New Testaments, the Catholic Church, just as there's history surrounding the construction of Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy. But the storyline, the details, is myth. Now, back to ancient aliens. There are several publications which obviously the ancient alien hunters have not researched, nor have the authors of these very important works been interviewed during the ancient alien presentations. In other words, the ancient alien hunters have carefully chosen those to interview. That is, they have handpicked those who support their hypothesis, and this is not good research. These publications include Noah's Flood, the new scientific discoveries about the event that changed history by William Ryan and Walter Pittman, the 2300 BC event, volumes 1 through 3 by Mandelker, a Sumerian observation of Koffel's impact event by Alan Bond and Mark Hempsel, Before the Pyramids, Cracking Archaeology's Greatest Mystery by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler, and many others, but this will get the viewer started in a more reasonable direction. To begin, Sitchen in his Earth Chronicles series has confused symbols with their reference, and has interpreted Sumerian, Egyptian, and biblical myth as historical fact. Yes, myth can portray perception of events and beliefs about gods and so on, but to confuse their interpretations and substitute their gods and goddesses as alien beings is pure fantasy. Moreover, and this is important, when Sitchen offers a hypothesis, it becomes a fact after a couple of pages without proof or presentation of unambiguous evidence. He confuses meteors with spaceships, priestly garb with space suits, and strange-looking images as aliens. Let's first start with a reasonable explanation of Noah's flood. Now, beginning around 12,000 years ago, the earth began to warm, and gradually over many thousands of years, vast ice sheets melted, causing water levels around the world to rise about 350 feet or so. In most areas, this was gradual, and the populations in and around coastal areas had time to adapt. In some areas, they did not. This is the gist of Noah's Flood by Ryan and Pittman. As the Mediterranean Sea slowly gained in volume, the portals to the Bosporus gave way and flooded the Black Sea, formerly a freshwater lake, drowning thousands and thousands of inhabitants on the shores of that lake. Ryan and Pittman have collected a great deal of scientific evidence to support their position. The time period for this was somewhere around 5600 BC. Now, such a catastrophic event left its mark in myth or stories handed down until noted on clay tablets around 3,000 years later. This, I believe, is the basis of the Noah's Ark stories. In a similar fashion, and at approximately the same time period, waters from the Indian Ocean cascaded over what is now the Strait of Hormuz, becoming today what is known as the Persian Gulf, likewise flooding that area and drowning thousands and thousands of people. Now this area, or this geography of the Persian Gulf, is what some scholars believe to be the Garden of Eden in the Bible. Now this is a more likely story than an angry, psychotic God flooding the world to get rid of all his ill-mannered children, except Noah and his sons and wives, of course, a story taught by Christian fundamentalists as historical fact. There is no evidence that the whole world was flooded in 40 days. It would take longer than 40 days, and there isn't enough water on earth to accomplish this. But of course, gods can do what they want. The ancient alien hunters would have us believe that ancient aliens manipulated our weather, causing havoc, with Sitchen suggesting this is what happened to get rid of gene-spliced humans of experiments gone wrong. And people are gullible enough to believe this. Now, I will speak to the psychology of gullibility in a future presentation. Let's now go to the next issue, and that is a Sumerian myth of Gilgamesh, and Sitchin's interpretation of the deities, that is Marduk and Tiamat, battling out as planets with a satellite of Marduk impacting the earth, while other deities, Inanna, Enlil, and Anu, these he considers ancient aliens, and so on. The Gilgamesh epic is a myth that everybody should read, for it is a story that would play well in today's world. It's a story of a semi-divine person. He's half human and half god. Sitchen interprets this as the Nephilim coming to earth and breeding with humans. At any rate, it's a story about a semi-divine, corrupt king who's not taking care of business. In my opinion, Obama comes to mind with this, who is likewise seducing all the fair maidens. Does the name Clinton come to mind? The townspeople complain to Inanna, and she fixes Gilgamesh up with an equal, and his name is Enkidu, and he's a wild man. They engage combat, they wrestle together, they fall in love, and have great adventures. But Enkidu is still a wild man, so Gilgamesh fixes him up with a prostitute, and she enlightens him, as all women do, and of course the animals now won't have much to do with Enkidu. At any rate, they capture the monster Humbaba, and Enkidu kills him. Inanna likes Humbaba. He's a good monster to her, and so she kills Enkidu. Now, Gilgamesh is heartbroken, as you can understand, and questions why we aren't immortal. And so he searches for the herb of immortality that he hears about. He meets up with one of the original Noahs, Utnapishti, and he learns that the herb is to be found at the bottom of the ocean. And he dives down, he gets the herb, he comes back up, he goes to a well and sets the herb down, and while he's washing himself off, a snake comes by and eats the herb. And of course, immortality is lost to him. Of course, the snake becomes immortal because it sheds its skin and is reborn. This is the most likely meaning of the story. That is, no matter what you do, you're eventually going to die. Period. Now, Sitchen makes this into something else. Marduk, according to Sitchen, anyway, is the 12th planet from which alien beings, Nephilim, or giants from the heaven in the Bible, came to earth and mated with humans. Now, this is a rather convoluted but admittedly creative rendition of the Sumerian myth, and this short presentation can't do it justice. In any case, Sitchen uses as evidence what is called the planisphere, a round clay tablet found at Nineveh, copied probably around 700 BC, but it's likely a celestial event dating to either June 29th, 3123 BC, or June 29th, 2222 BC. Now, the Sumerian astronomers appear to have recorded a real event not the one Sitchen invented, but an actual impact of a 1.2 kilometer meteor. Note the flight path. The meteor apparently broke up and exploded over Kofels, Austria, with a force of 10 to the 10th power tons of TNT, destroying all life forms for miles and miles and miles around. This explains the tektites, or glass beads, found in layers throughout the Middle East. No aliens, no atom bombs, no weapons, no wars between various alien groups, just an unfortunate celestial event. This event created a plume and a ring of debris surrounding the Earth, oriented to the constellations of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. Now, this leads us to the next issue, and that is the destruction and cultural collapse that went on in the Middle East, many areas of Europe, and so on, around 2300 BC, which may have been precipitated by this meteor strike, or perhaps it's a separate issue with numerous meteors entering the atmosphere, not necessarily reaching the Earth's surface, but placing a great deal of debris in the atmosphere. Now, be that as it may, beginning around 2300 BC, there are movements of the Earth's crust. This is called plate tectonics. Earthquakes, weather changes, leading to drought, famine, architectural destruction throughout Europe and the Middle East, India, and other areas, as evidenced by archaeological research. These geological events almost instantly led to cultural change, including alteration in mythic themes in cultures almost worldwide, as discussed by Mandelker in his 3-volume set. Again, this destruction may be related to the meteor impact, or maybe it's a separate, unfortunate series of natural, geological, and celestial events. Now, Sitchen sees the Indian myths presented in the Mahabharata as evidence of spaceships, alien warfare, atom bombs, and so on. The reality is, however, this destruction was precipitated by natural events and not the activities of aliens. To discuss Mandelker's work in detail would take many presentations, so let me end by saying, read the books, including Sitchen, and come to your own conclusions. When doing honest research, one has to read both sides of the story and stay as unbiased as possible. Do the research, you decide. It's much easier to suggest aliens than to think things through, really. Sitchen presents a wonderful story. That is to say, he takes ancient myths and attempts to bring them into the modern world with a Star Wars theme. But the truth is, we are dealing with natural events and not aliens and the 12th planet. Now, I'd like to hear a response from the History Channel and the Ancient Alien Hunters, but that is unlikely, as, in my opinion, they're committed to their storyline. They're more interested in making money and perpetuating fantasy than seeking truth. More on ancient aliens next time.